Good morning to all. So in the last class we discussed about the input devices. Basically the second part of this input devices, which includes the image and also the video input devices, and then the Bluetooth device. So the input devices is categorized into four major topics, which means the first one was regarding the keyboard, second one was the pointing devices, then the image and video input devices, then the last one was regarding the Bluetooth device. So that's regarding the input devices, a third major topic from the chapter, which is the introduction to the hardware. And now we have the fourth topic in this module, which is the output devices. So both this input and output devices, these two components of this computer, both this input and also the output devices, we call it as I or I bar or, which means input and output. So both the devices are very important aspects of a computer. So basically we have three major category of the output devices. So which includes, the first one is regarding the visual display unit, which is the screen or the monitor of the computer. Then we have the computer speaker, it is also very important. Then last one is regarding the printers. So these are the three major output devices of the computer that we should focus on. So today we have the introduction to the output unit, then we have the also the VDU, which is the monitor, and later we will focus on the computer speakers too. So the output devices, it is any piece of the computer hardware equipment which is used to communicate the results of the data processing which is carried out by a computer to the outside world. So this means that any kind of this the device which comes under the topic output devices, it helps to get to present the data or the result of any process with the help of this computer. So basically we already discussed about the input and output devices in the last class, in the first class of this module. So basically the output device, by definition like to this output device, we can define the output device as it is any piece of computer hardware equipment used to communicate the results of data processing carried out by a computer to the outside world. So the basic the concentration of this output device is that it is used to communicate the results of the data processing carried out by a computer to the outside world. It is very clear regarding this the process or the principle of this output device, in which it helps to give the result of the process or the activities that we already gave to computer as the input process, and it will give the result of all this kind of input process as the output result, and this output results are carried out by this kind of output devices, which includes the visual display unit, the monitor, then the speaker, and also the printers. So these are the three major aspects of the output devices. Since most information from a computer is output in either a visual or auditory format, the most common output devices are the monitor and also the speakers. So the major aspects or the major important output devices is we can categorize these devices into which is very essential aspects of the computer, in which the monitor, the video, the visual display unit, and also the speaker. So both these devices gives us the result of the process. Maybe the audio clips may be played through the speakers, and we get this processing data, or the some maybe other maybe the like the word processing data or any kind of data in the screen as the result of any activity. So that's regarding the basics of this output devices, the function of the output device. It will give the result, it will present the result on the screen, or we'll get the output as the speakers, through the speakers, basically the audio output through the speakers, and also any kind of this visual output on the screen. So that's regarding just an introduction to the output devices, the major uses of these output devices. Basically the monitors and speakers, these are the most important or most essential part of this computer as the output devices. Then these two devices provide the instant feedback to the user's input, and also displaying it means that displaying the characters as they are typed or playing a song selected from a playlist. While monitors and speakers are the most common output devices, there are many others. Also, some examples include the headphones, printers, projectors, lighting control systems, audio recording devices, robotic machines, like that. So all these categories which comes under the topic, the output devices. So some of the most commonly used output devices we can discuss in this class, in which the first one is the visual display unit, which is the VDU. So the basics or the most essential which is commonly used the output device, which includes the visual display unit, then the speaker, and also the kind of these printers. So the first one is the visual display unit, which is the VDU. So a VDU, which means a monitor or a display, which is also called as this kind of VDU. It is a piece of electrical equipment which displays the images generated by devices such as computers without producing a permanent record. And the monitor comprises the actual display device, circuitry, and an enclosure. So this is regarding just an definition to the visual display unit, and also the basics of the components of this VDU. So which means that it is a kind of a piece of the electrical equipment which displays the images generated by the devices such as the computers without producing a permanent record. So that's a definition for the VDU. And also the monitor comprises the actual display device that we see in as the monitor of the computer, then the circuitry, and also an enclosure. So in this enclosure, all these kind of circuits and all these kind of different types of technology, basically the cathode ray tube and also the LCD, LED, whatever the technology is, all this kind of the console will be inside this enclosure. So that's regarding the definition and some major aspects regarding the VDU. And also the main difference between a monitor and a television is that a monitor does not have a television tuner to change the channels. So it is very significant aspect in which both the principle which is used in this monitor and also in the TV, which is the same, but there will not be this kind of television tuner to change the channels in the computer monitors. So it is basically a change. And also a monitor may be used to watch the television if it is connected to a device that has a television tuner. So basically nowadays all the monitors which comes with the specification of the HDMI cables, so that we can connect the set-top box or whatever the television medium it is, we can connect to the monitor itself. So it is also a kind of advancement, but basically we have to connect a tuner card in order to use this monitor as a common television. Then some models of monitor can be used as a television, and some televisions are used with the computers too. So both these specifications may be provided by the companies, manufacturing companies. So a monitor has a better display resolution than a television to make it easier to see smaller letters and graphics on. So it is a very important aspect of a monitor, in which it has a advantage over the television, in which a monitor has a better display resolution, and also it is very easier to find out this kind of small letters and also graphics on it. So basically nowadays the televisions are also advancing in its specifications, but in a common division we can see that the monitors has a slight advantage over the television, in which it has a feature of this kind of better resolution, and also we get a clear and aspect of any kind of small letters and graphics through these monitors. So we have basically two major divisions of these monitors, and basically nowadays we have one more category, which is the LED screen. So basically we have, according to the textbook, we have only two categories. They are the CRT monitor, which uses the cathode ray tube technology, then the LCD monitor, which is the liquid crystal display. So, and also we have the LED screen, which is the latest addition to the which means that all these category, basically these two divisions represents two different generations. So the LCD monitor is one of the advanced form of these monitors, and the CRT monitor, which is used in the earlier days as the typical monitor of the computer, it is a outdated form of monitor as of now, and we use only the kind of this LCD or the LED screens beyond this kind of CRT monitor. So we have a clear idea regarding a clear picture also in the textbook, page number 83. So this technology is very important, but it is a kind of oldest form of this technology, which is based on this visual display unit. So first one, the CRT monitor, which is a big and heavy, and it is the oldest technology used by the monitors. It looks like a television but has a bigger display resolution and often a higher frequency. And also a CRT stands for the cathode ray tube. So this cathode ray tube, which is the principle or technology used in this older kind of these monitors, it is we can in a common aspects we can call it as a kind of big and heavy kind of monitor, and also it is the oldest technology used by the monitor. So it is just like an outdated form of this monitor, which is the CRT monitor. Second type of this monitor is the LCD monitor, so which is basically a thin, flat and also lightweight while we compare to the CRT monitor, and it is a newer technology than the CRTs, and also the quality can be the same or even better than a CRT. So LCD screens maybe they provide the HD, full HD, also the 4K kind of this technology. Basically LED screens too. So basically while we compare to the CRT monitor, the LCD monitor has a very great advantage over this CRT monitor, in which it is thin, flat and lightweight in its dimensions, and also it is used this kind of new technology than the CRT monitors, and also it will give a kind of better resolution, better visual quality, and also the most important thing regarding the LCD monitor is that it usually costs more than a CRTs. So it is basically much expensive than the CRTs, but the quality and all these kind of the specification that provides LCD monitor is one of the most advanced form of this kind of visual display units. So now we have third category, which is the LED screen. It is also very important that we should focus on. So LED screen means it is also a very thin, flat and also lightweight kind of this monitor, and it uses this principle of this LED, which means the light emitting diode, and it is very good for our visuals, so our visual kind of this dimension, in which it is very useful for our eyes. Basically we can control the lights, and also there will be different kind of modes in which it uses a kind of very adaptive kind of this lights according to our specifications, according to our need. So it is a kind of advanced form of this visual display unit. So now we have the detailed analysis of the topic, which is the cathode ray tube, first kind of this monitor. So CRT, which is the cathode ray tube, it is a kind of vacuum tube containing an electron gun, which is a source of electron, and a fluorescent screen with internal or external means to accelerate and to deflect the electron beam used to create the images in the form of light emitted from the fluorescent screen. So this means that the electrons, it is the basics of this cathode ray tube, and it is a kind of vacuum tube containing this kind of electron gun, and also there will be a fluorescent screen in order to project all these kind of the monitors or this kind of source into the monitor. And also with the internal or external means, it will accelerate the deflect of the electron beam used to create the images in the form of light emitted from the fluorescent screen. So from the screen, the fluorescent screen, it gives this kind of light emitting kind of this kind of screen, and thus we get the display as a kind of very colorful or the very detailed kind of this display or this details on the screen. And also the back of the tube has a negatively charged cathode, and also the electron gun shoots the electrons down the tube and onto a charged screen. So basically this electron gun is one of the most important aspect of the CRT tube or the cathode ray tube, and this principle is that this on the back of this tube there will be a kind of this negatively charged cathode. So there is a electron, and also we have the negatively charged cathode on this cathode ray tube, and also the electron gun shoots the electrons down to the tube. So basically firstly the electron gun just shoots the electrons to the tube onto the charged screen. So the charged screen means this fluorescent screen, and this screen is coated with a pattern of phosphor dots that glow when struck by the electron stream. So this phosphor dots, which means a kind of fluorescent screen of this cathode ray tube. So while this kind of this electron hits on this screen, on this fluorescent screen, it will reflect, it will produce a kind of electron stream, and then it will start glowing. So this is the basic principle of this cathode ray tube, how it works. And also each cluster of 3 dots, one of each color in 1 pixel. So basically this all this screen, basically the fluorescent screen is divided into different clusters, and each clusters consist of 3 dots. So these 3 dots means one of each color. So basically the most commonly used colors are the red, blue and green. So RGB, so these kind of colors is used for these dots, and this 3 dots of one of each color is recognized, or we can call it as a 1 pixel. So basically we just measures this value of this monitors or the screen as the pixels or dots per inch. So this means that the image on the monitor screen is usually made up of from at least tens of thousands of such tiny dots glowing on command from the computer. So just combination of thousands of these dots or this kind of pixels, it provides a kind of beautiful image. So a image is a kind of a combination of this wide area or the thousands of these dots or pixels, and it gives a beautiful picture or the image on the screen. So this is the basic principle of this cathode ray tube. Basically this is one of the fundamentals of this cathode ray tube monitor, and also this pixels is one of the fundamental of this measurement of these monitors. And also the beam or this kind of electron beam which reflects, which puts on this screen of this fluorescent screen, it is a kind of a beam in which it is deflected either by a magnetic or an electric field to move the bright dots to the required position on the screen. And also the external electromagnets deflect these beams magnetically, while the internal plates placed near to and also the alongside the beam which deflect it electrostatically. So this means that there is a kind of two kind of divisions in which how it deflects. So basically it uses the magnetic kind of this deflection, and secondly it uses this kind of electrostatic or this kind of external electromagnets. So these are the basics of the fundamentals of this cathode ray tube, how it works, how the function of this cathode ray tube. And also the image on the monitor screen is usually made up of this kind of thousands of these dots and glowing on command from the computer. So from the instructions from the computer, it gives a beautiful image, which is a combination of thousands and thousands of these dots, which gives a beautiful image. So and also this beam, which is deflected either by magnetic or an electric field. So there are two kind of deflection technology, two types of deflection, which is magnetic, and another is the electric kind of this deflection. So this is the basics or the fundamental of this cathode ray tube. And also in television sets, the computer monitors, the entire front area of the tube is scanned repeatedly and systematically in a fixed pattern called a raster. So raster, which means it is a rectangular array of closely spaced parallel lines scanned one at a time from left to right. So in the CRT screens on the monitor, on the display that we see on the front of this computer screen, there is a kind of raster which is used in this monitors, in which it is a rectangular array of closely spaced parallel lines scanned one at a time from left to right. So from left to right, these kind of lines or this kind of parallel lines will be scanned, and by scanning these kind of lines, it produces an image. So that this raster is one of the important aspect of this monitor, which produces a beautiful image, and also the beam scans across the top of the monitor from left to right. So the working principle of these CRT monitors is that on the screen there is a raster, which means it just moves from left to right, and it gives a clear picture of the image that we have to project on the screen. So this is the working principle of this CRT monitor. So in the television sets and also in the computer monitors, the entire front area of the tube, which means the front side of these monitors, which is scanned repeatedly and systematically in a fixed pattern, which is called as the raster. And we can define this raster as it is a rectangular array of closely spaced parallel lines scanned one at a time from left to right. So this basically means that it is a kind of array of these parallel lines which has a specific spacing, and also it scans from left to right. So with the scanning, this image produced, or the whatever this display which is produced by which is output resulted by this computer, we get a clear picture of this image or any kind of this source of this monitor. So that's regarding a raster. So a raster is a rectangular array of closely spaced parallel lines scanned one at a time from left to right. So basically it is situated at the front side of this monitor. Then the beam scans across the top of the monitor from left to right, is then blanked and moved back to the left hand side slightly below the previous trace on the next scan line, and also scans across the second line, and also until the bottom right of the screen is reached, the beam is again blanked and moved back to the top left to start again, and this process draws a complete picture, typically 50 to 100 times a second. So which means that this continuous process of this raster technology, or this process of the raster, it is from the top to the bottom and also from the left to the right. So by completing a 50 to 100 times a second, it gives a clear picture. So it is also a working principle of this monitor, in which this technology or the process of this raster, which is an array of this closely spaced parallel lines of this light lines, or the rays of this light. So this is the one of the important aspects regarding which is related to the working principle of the CRT. So basically we have to focus on this cathode ray tube as a topic of a question, maybe a paragraph or a essay question in which the working principle of this cathode ray tube. So the first one was regarding the cathode ray, how it performs. So basically we have an electric gun in which it emits this kind of electrons to a specific kind of screen, which is basically the fluorescent screen, and from that we get a reflected image, a deflected image which produces on this screen, and on the screen how it performs or how it comes is like this process of this raster, and also the by deflecting from this this fluorescent screen it forms a kind of dots, and this combination of these dots and the pixels, which is measurement, and this combination of these dots, it produces a beautiful kind of this image. So this is the simple principle of this cathode ray tube, and we have two kind of deflection, basically the magnetic and also the electric, and it uses the external electromagnets also in order to deflect this kind of rays. Second principle is that, or second point is that the use of this raster. So raster is a rectangular array of these parallel lines which is has a specific space, and it is just scanning from left to the right and throughout the screen from the top to the bottom and from the left to the right, and it gives a very good image by reaching typically 50 to 100 times a second. So this is basically the working principle of this CRT. The CRT, which means the cathode ray tube monitor, and also the number of times in 1 second that the electron gun redraws the entire image is called as the refresh rate, and it is measured in hertz, which means the cycles per second. So this means that the kind of this measurement, the number of times in 1 second that the electron gun redraws the entire image, which is called as this refresh rate. So the image produced by this electron gun, how many times it produces, how many pixels, how many dots it creates. So this all these values we can together we can measure with the help of this refresh rate. It is very important, and if the higher this refresh rate, the resolution also will be good. So it is very important. So it is measured in this cycles per second, which means in hertz. So that's regarding this cathode ray tube, how it measures, and also an image which is produced by modulating the intensity of each of these 3 electron beams, one for each primary color, which means the red, green, blue, which is basic colors, with a received video signal. So we have a clear picture of this this cathode, the principle of this cathode ray tube on the textbook, page number 84, and in that picture we get this clear idea regarding what is a electron gun, where is this electron beams, then the focusing coils were, and also the kind of this deflecting and all these kind of beams, and they also the screen, the fluorescent screen. All these things we get a clear idea by looking this picture in a very good manner. And also an exception to this typical ball shaped CRT would be that the flat CRTs. So the picture that we get on the textbook is that it is a kind of typical kind of this ball shaped CRT, which means the older forms of this monitor, the backside may be a little bit lengthier, like this kind of this ball shaped kind of this monitor, and in that category also we have a flat shaped CRTs. So also these all these components may be in different structure, but the principle may be the same in both these kind of two shapes of the CRTs. So basically we already we discussed all these topics on the basis of this ball shaped CRTs, which is one of the oldest forms of this CRTs monitors. And also this kind of CRTs in this unit was flat, and this electron gun located roughly at the right angles below the display surface, thus requiring a sophisticated electronics to create an undistorted picture. So there is a kind of change in this flat kind of the CRTs. So it is a kind of difference in this different kind of the CRTs, but we have only one principle for all these kind of CRTs, which is this kind of cathode ray tube, a vacuum tube, and also this kind of electronic gun, which produces all these kind of images by just putting all these kind of these dots to the screen, and by which help of this raster and the process of this kind of all this kind of process, we get a kind of a beautiful image on the screen. So this is regarding a very important topic, which is the principle or the working principle of the CRT, and also regarding the entire CRT monitors. So this is the one of the oldest forms of monitors that we use. And now we have the second topic, which is the liquid crystal display, LCD screen. So liquid crystal display means a kind of display which is an electronically modulated optical device shaped into a thin flat panel made up of any number of color or monochrome pixels filled with liquid crystals and also arrayed in front of a light source, backlight or reflector. So the working principle on this LCD screen is entirely different than a commonly used this CRT screens, in which a liquid crystal display, a definition is that it is an electronically modulated optical device shaped into a thin flat panel made up of any number of color or monochrome pixels filled with the liquid crystals and arrayed in front of a light source, which is a backlight or reflector. So this is regarding just an definition to this LCD screens, and we have to focus on this topic in a very detailed manner, in which the working principle of this LCD screen, and also it is the one of the most commonly used kind of this monitor in our day-to-day life. So a liquid crystal display is one of the most commonly used kind of this display, in which it basically use a kind of a thin and flat panel which is made up of any number of color or monochrome pixels and which is filled with these liquid crystals and also arrayed in front of a light source, backlight or a reflector. So there is a very broad change while we are focusing on this topic, which is the liquid crystal display, and we already discussed about the CRT display, which is the cathode ray tube, and both these principle is very different in its nature, in which CRT uses this kind of electronic gun and also this kind of reflecting onto the fluorescent screen, whereas here we have a kind of a different or the advanced form of this technology, in which this device, a kind of this electronically modulated optical device, and which is shaped into a thin also flat panel made up of any number of color or monochrome pixels, and this is filled with this kind of liquid crystals and arrayed in front of a light source, which is a backlight, and we can call this backlight as a reflector. So this basically the change in this light ray and also the use of this component, in which in this LCD display the major major components are this kind of this thin and flat panel and also this liquid crystals, in which which is filled with this kind of monochrome and also this kind of colors. So this is the basic change while we discuss this topic, which is the liquid crystal display than the commonly used, the most oldest form of this monitor, which is the CRT kind of monitors. And each pixel of an LCD display consists of a layer of molecules aligned between two transparent electrodes and two polarizing filters, and the axis of transmission of which are in most of these cases which is perpendicular to each other, and also with no actual liquid crystal between the polarizing filters. Light passing through the first filter would be blocked by the second polarizers, and also the surface of the electrodes that are in contact with the liquid crystal material are treated so as to align the liquid crystal molecules in a particular direction. So this means that there is a kind of a transmission from one liquid crystal unit to another crystal, and by transmitting these sources, especially the light which is passing through these liquid crystals, and by passing through from one to the other, and by going through these two filters, the first filter would be blocked by the second. So there is a mechanism in which the first filter, which is in which the light which is passed through the first filter, and this light will be blocked by the second filter, and which is known by the name second polarizers, and this surface of the electrodes that are in contact with the liquid crystal material are treated so as to align the liquid crystal molecules in a particular direction. So basically in this LCD display, the method or the principle which is used is this kind of transferring from one point to another point through these liquid crystals. And what is transferred from one point to another point is that it is the light ray, basically this kind of monochrome pixels which is filled up with this kind of liquid crystals. So by passing through these filters, the first one which is passed through in the first filter, the second filter will block it, and by blocking that we get a kind of a reflection, and also the second filter, which is known by the name second polarizer or the crossed polarizer, and by blocking this, the surface of the electrodes that are in contact with the liquid crystal material are treated as to align the liquid crystal molecules in a particular direction. So all these liquid crystal molecules will be going through in a particular direction, and this treatment typically consists of a thin polymer layer that is unidirectionally rubbed using, for example, a cloth. So there will be a kind of this, we have another kind of layer which is the polymer layer. So in the CRT display we have this fluorescent layer, we have here this kind of this polymer layer, and in which it is unidirectionally rubbed, which means in a systematic order it will be rubbed using this, for example, a cloth like that. So it will be in a very smooth surface, and also the direction of this liquid crystal alignment is then defined by the direction of this rubbing. So the rubbing, which is another important process, like we already looked at the topic in the CRT display, there is a kind of process which is the raster. So here we have a kind of rubbing, which is another process in which this rubbing, this treatment of typically consists of this thin polymer layer, and which is unidirectionally rubbed using this cloth, and this direction of this liquid crystal alignment is then defined by the direction of this rubbing. So it is an important process in this liquid crystal display. And also the electrodes that are made up of this transparent conductor called the indium tin oxide, which is ITO. So this ITO is used as this kind of transparent conductor in order to transmit this light rays to this kind of polymer layer. So here we have a simple principle of this liquid crystal display is that the light which is passed through these two filters then reflected to a kind of this polymer layer, and in this polymer layer there is a process of this rubbing take place, like the rubbing of with a cloth, and this process is in a very unidirectional method, and this method, after this method, the direction of this method or this liquid crystal element will be defined by this rubbing method or this direction of the rubbing. And also the electrodes are made of this transparent conductor, and through this conductor, which is called as this indium tin oxide ITO, we get this light or this kind of the array of this light in a very good manner, which helps to produce a beautiful image later. So before applying an electric field, the orientation of the liquid crystal molecules is determined by the alignment at the surfaces, and also in a twisted pneumatic device, which is still the most common liquid crystal device, the surface alignment directions at the two electrodes are perpendicular to each other. So here also we have a direction in which both these directions should be in perpendicular, in which the molecules should arrange themselves in a helical structure. So helical structure means in a very straight manner. So we get the display in a very straight or in a very flat based manner, so that this process of this transmitting this light rays through this kind of principle or this process will be result this kind of flat surface. So that's regarding the LCD monitor, the working principle of this the LCD monitor. And also in a twisted pneumatic device, still the most common liquid crystal device, and the surface alignment directions at the two electrodes are perpendicular to each other, and so the molecules arrange themselves in a helical structure or twist, and this reduces the rotation of the polarization in the incident light, and the device appears which is gray in color. And if the applied voltage is large enough, these liquid crystal molecules in the center of the layer are almost completely untwisted, and the polarization of the incident light is not rotated as it passes through the liquid crystal layer. So there is also a kind of another process taking place inside these layers according to the voltage. So if the voltage is large enough, the liquid crystal molecules in the center of the layer are almost completely untwisted, and the polarization of this incident light is not rotated as it passes through the liquid crystal layer, and then this light will then be mainly polarized perpendicular to the second filter, and thus be blocked at the pixel will appear as black. By controlling this voltage applied across this liquid crystal layer, in each pixel light can be allowed to pass through in varying amounts, thus constituting different levels of gray. So this is how different colors of LCD monitor will originate, or which makes in a very systematic manner, in which by this kind of polarization, this process of polarization, different layers of light, or this kind of the layers that are passed through these layers, and then with the help of this transparent conductor called this indium tin oxide, and with the help of that this kind of process take place again, and then this kind of where we have the voltage adjusting the voltage according to these colors, and we get the gray color first, and also then after we apply this voltage very large in its nature, the liquid crystal molecule in the center of the layer are almost completely untwisted, and the polarization of this incident light is not rotated as it passes through this liquid crystal layer, and then this light will be mostly perpendicular to this second filter, and thus it will, like that we discussed earlier, it will block the second layer, and then by blocking that we get the black color. So there here we have how the colors are originated in the liquid crystal display. The first one is the gray color, second one is the black color, and by controlling the voltage that we applied for this display by the external provider, and by controlling this voltage applied across the liquid crystal layer in each pixel. So pixel means every aspect of this dot, the measurement of this image, and light can be allowed to pass through in varying amounts, thus constituting different levels of gray. So simply by controlling the voltage that we applying to this liquid crystal layer, or this processing layer of this liquid crystal display, we get different kinds of layers or different kinds of colors from gray to black. So by getting this kind of colors, we get a clear picture of the result or the output of this processes that we already gave to the computer as the input unit, through the input unit. And also in color LCDs, each individual pixel is divided into 3 cells. So each pixel is divided into 3 cells, or we can call it as a sub pixels, and which are colored by this kind of commonly used these 3 colors, which are red, green and blue. So each pixel is a kind of these cells or these sub pixels which are colored red, green and blue, and respectively by additional filters, which means different kind of filters may be used in a display. They are the pigment filters, dye filters and metal oxide filters, etc. So each this kind of sub pixel can be controlled independently to yield thousands or the millions of possible colors for each pixel. And also this thin film transistor, which is the TFT, we call it as a TFT. So these LCD displays we can also term like this TFT displays, and these LCDs are currently the most popular kind of display of these computers. So this means that this film transistor, the thin film transistor, the TFT, is a kind of a layer or the major aspect of this LCD display, in which it helps to produce different colors, especially each pixels is divided into sub pixels, which means the 3 colors is constituted in each pixels, which means the red, green and blue. So by controlling this kind of process, we get a clear picture of this output in the monitor. So this is the working principle of this liquid crystal display. So in a very simple manner, this process is a kind of a light like a light reaction of these lights, and this reaction is taking place through 2 major steps, by going through first filter and then the second filter will block it, and then after it will be reflected or into this kind of thin display, which is a polymer layer, and then the process of rubbing takes place, and we get this kind of electrodes through this kind of process, and these electrodes are made of this transparent indium tin oxide. So this is the first part of this principle of this LCD. Then in the second part we have how colors are made in this liquid crystal displays. So it is a very complex kind of this process, but simply we can see that firstly it produces the grey color by this process, and then by controlling the voltage, that the power that we give to this liquid crystal display, we get the black color, and also we can control by this kind of this voltage adjustment. Then this aspect is very important, in which in color LCDs, which is the mostly commonly used kind of this LCD displays, each individual pixel, the other part was like they commonly used the earliest models of like the black and white kind of displays. Mostly the color LCD displays, in which each individual part of this picture is subdivided into different cells or the sub pixels, and it is in this kind of 3 colors, the combination of these 3 colors, which are the red, then the blue and green, RBG. So this RBG means it is the basics of this formation for this display, and with the help of this some filters that we discussed earlier, like the pigment filters, dye filters, metal oxide filters, and all these kind of filters, all the sub pixels should be controlled independently to produce this kind of thousands and millions of possible colors. So from these each pixels, so by constituting all these kind of pixels, we get a clear picture. So and also this thin film transistor, which is used in this color display, is termed as this TFTs, and TFT is one of the important aspect of this LCD display too. So this is the major working principle of this LCD display. It is very important. So I just going to wind up today's class. So in which the first point was regarding the visual display unit, the output unit, the first part of this output unit, and we discussed the 2 major displays. They are the cathode ray tube and also the LCD. Both principles are very important, and it is very elaborately described in the textbook. So with the help of this kind of the slides and also some kind of extra videos, we get a clear visual experience of this process. So that we will be focusing on later. So in this class we get a clear idea regarding these two displays, what are some basic aspects, principle, functionality of these displays. And in the next class we have some performance measurements of these displays, then just a comparison between these two displays, then the later topics of this output unit, which includes the computer, speaker and printers. So that we discuss in the next class. So that's for today. Thank you. Happy learning.